The Marty and Laura Show is brought to you by Veterinary Village. With locations throughout Wisconsin, Veterinary Village is dedicated to enhancing the quality of animal and human lives, today and into the future. Welcome to the Marty and Laura Show. I am your host, Laura Reeves, and my dear friend, Dr. Marty Greer. And we are together again, as they say. And we talked last week about kitty bladders and all of the things that go with that. And so we said that this week we were going to do doggy bladders and all of the things that go with that. And they're very different. Dogs get bladder infections. Dogs get bladder stones less often than kidney stones. Am I right about that, or about like that?
Yes. Yeah, kidney stones in dogs are really, really rare.
Right.
They're still pretty rare in cats, but they're pretty rare in dogs.
So let's start with bladder infections, because that's a pretty common, your puppy comes home and it's changing its water, it's not drinking enough, it's spending more time cooped up, whatever it is, and it starts to have that really familiar, I've got to go outside 20 minutes later, I've got to go outside, and it's like 2 drops of pee, right? So let's start there.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to begin. And bladder infections are relatively common in dogs, much more common in females than in males. If you have a male dog with recurrent bladder infections, that's a little weird. Um, Typically, we don't see those in dogs, male dogs. So you need to see a veterinarian and try to figure out what the underlying cause is, because that is not typical. But females are relatively frequently affected. But the tricky part is a lot of these females, especially the young ones that haven't gone through a heat cycle yet, have puppy vaginitis that can mimic bladder infections, but it's not actually an infection. And we should not be reaching for antibiotics automatically every time the puppy has that kind of a symptom. So,
Right.
again, this is something that you need to speak to your veterinarian about, go into the veterinary clinic, have it checked out. And there are some treatments for puppy vaginitis that can be very successful in using those instead of reaching for an antibiotic. The problem with reaching for antibiotics in dogs, cats, humans, whatever species, is that the more often we reach for them, and we don't absolutely have to have them, the more likely we are to end up with bacterial resistance,
Right.
which then doesn't just affect your dog or your cat, but it can affect all the dogs in your house. It can affect you. So we can then start to see MRSAs, and that's very important. The American Vet Med Association and the American Kennel Club, AKC, have actually aligned for the first time on this topic.
Very exciting.
And so Jerry Klein at AKC and Tess House at AVMA have been working very hard in aligning, and there's some really good articles out there on how this alignment has to really work to be successful, and the importance of saying we should not just automatically be reaching for antibiotics at the drop of a hat. So if you do need an antibiotic, you should get it from your veterinarian, and you should use it for the amount of time that you were prescribed to use it for, and not stop using it, and save a few for the next time, because that's going to get you into trouble. Those antibiotics are likely to expire before you need them again, which is going to reduce their efficacy and increase the chance, if you're not using them for the length of time that is prescribed, and it may be 14 days for a bladder infection, that if you end up not using them correctly, you're going to end up with bacterial resistance. And if that starts to affect your health or the health of other people in your family, you're going to be very unhappy about that.
Yeah, 100%. Talk to us about, how are we going to know, or can we as the owner know, the difference between like a little puppy vaginitis and a full-blown bladder infection, and like causes and that sort of thing?
So puppy vaginitis, you're going to see on these young female puppies a little bit of a sticky, mucousy kind of discharge around the vulva, down into the hair, or in the groin area. So that's really pretty common in young female dogs. It's common in young female humans as well. In little girls, they put them in cotton underwear instead of nylon or polyester or whatever. I guess probably there's a new underwear now made out of bamboo that probably would work. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, but these are not the kinds of things that you can do with a dog. So the typical recommendation in dogs is to practice better hygiene, and that's going to mean at bedtime before she goes to to bed at night in her crate or wherever she sleeps, that you take a baby wipe and you clean it up. You get a little $20 pair of clippers off of Amazon. You can buy rechargeable clippers now. They're quiet, they're easy to use. You can shave the area out so she has a nice clean area that doesn't have hair, that's got all this stuff sticking to it, and using a probiotic. So those three things:
Uh,
baby wipes at bedtime, a clipper for better hygiene. It's called a hygiene clip. There's other words for it as well. And using a good quality probiotic, a dog probiotic, not a human probiotic, can be really helpful.
Hortiflora, like that.
Fortiflora, Proviable, use a good one. Don't just go to the store and buy the cheapest one. You need to know how many colony forming units are in the probiotic at the expiration date. And those two companies, I can tell you, probiotics are better. So that's Fortiflora's product by Purina, and
Hmm.
that's Nutramax's product called Proviable. Easy to get. Your veterinarian can sell it to you, and that in and of itself can improve the urinary health of the young dog, the young female dog.
Mm,
Now, a lot of male dogs will have that sticky kind of discharge from their
mm,
prepuce. It's called
mhm.
balanoposthitis, and I people get really freaked out about it. They're like,
Or
"Oh my
it's
God,
called
it's
smegma, dude. I'm just saying.
well, well, smegma is the discharge. Balanoposthitis is the condition. So there's yeah, they're all linked together.
You.
But again, it is gooey, it's sticky, it's just like the females have, and it's just because they haven't been through puberty yet, and it's not a big deal. So keep him clean, use the same thing, use the probiotic, use the baby wipes, keep him clean. But again, don't be reaching for an antibiotic, or don't ask your veterinarian for an antibiotic for things that don't merit it, because your veterinarian does not want to prescribe something to you just to get you quieted down and out of the office.
Right.
Be reasonable about what you're asking for, because that may not be the appropriate treatment. So I'm just going to be really straight about that. You
Okay.
need to follow the guidelines. I've had clients, many, many, many clients over the years that have asked for antibiotics for unnecessary conditions. Super important.
Okay.
So,
Moving on. So puppy vaginitis, bladder
uh-huh.
infection. Where?
Well, puppy vaginitis, there is one more thing, and
Okay.
that's if I have a young female puppy with chronic vaginitis and she's really uncomfortable, there is a protocol to put her on a hormone for 4 doses over 2 weeks. I'm not going to give any details of it,
Hmm.
but have your veterinarian call me if they don't know what I'm talking about. They may know, they may not know, but there's a very simple protocol that you can put them on with 4 doses of a human hormone that will simulate the heat cycle enough to change the vaginal lining, the epithelial lining, and cut down on that vaginitis without using an antibiotic. So,
Whoa.
just to,
Okay. They
yeah, I know.
just blew up Laura's brain again.
I try to do it every week. It's not easy.
That is a new one on me. I've literally billions of
Yep,
dogs later never heard that one.
yep,
Good to
yep,
know.
yep,
Good to
yep.
know.
But remember, I go to the Therio meetings. I don't go to the same meetings that other veterinarians go to. If your vet's not going to the Therio meeting, they may not be
Yeah,
aware of it.
there you go. Okay. So how are we going to know the difference between that? Because a bladder infection will often come with a little discharge and that, urge to urinate more frequently, all that kind of stuff. Can we know, or do we have to get a urinalysis to find out?
It's typically going to require a urinalysis to get
Mm,
an actual accurate diagnosis. And most of the time, we're just going to run a urinalysis. We're not going to do a culture. Cultures are typically done if the puppy is not responding to the drugs as expected, or the bladder infections are coming back too frequently.
mm,
Then an appropriate culture will tell us which the correct antibiotic would be. So most of the time, we don't do a culture because of cost and because of the turnaround time on it. It can take 3 to 5 days to get that result back, and you're not going to want to wait 3 to 5 days to
mm,
put your dog on medication if there's strong evidence based on the urinalysis that there's a bladder infection. So sometimes people will see blood in the urine, and oftentimes in climates like we have, where it snows, your dog may have had symptoms of a bladder infection for a while, and until it snows and you see blood in the snow when your dog urinates, you may not have known that there was blood there. So if you're not sure, take a white paper towel or white Kleenex, something, and put it either where the dog is going to squat, or blot the area in the grass or the asphalt or the sidewalk where the dog has urinated. And if you see blood and she's not in heat, then yes, you definitely have evidence of a bladder infection, and you need to trot into the veterinary clinic
okay.
and have that checked out. And if the dog is straining to urinate, really uncomfortable, the dog may have developed stones secondary to a bladder infection. So, underdiagnosed or undertreated chronic bladder infections can turn into struvite stones. They won't turn into the other kinds of stones. The other stones, and there's a multitude of them we'll talk about, but the other stones are typically metabolic stones. So there's two kinds of stones in dogs. A metabolic stone, which means their body is making some strange chemical that's being deposited in the urine as a stone, or it's got an undertreated bladder infection that is leading to the development of a struvite stone. And struvites are magnesium, ammonium, and phosphate stone. That's the combination.
Okay. So that's a very specific difference from cats for sure. Um, one little item before we continue on talking about stones, which are the next step in our conversation. There is something of a, I won't say an old wives' tale, but there's something of a thing out there in the world that, you get your puppy, you don't give them water before they go to bed so they don't wake up in the morning and or wake you up in the middle of the night, and they're not getting enough to drink and they're not going out frequently enough, and that's causing a bladder infection. Is that a thing? Yes.
It
Okay.
is.
Mhm.
It is, because if they're not voiding their bladder frequently enough, then the urine is sitting in there for too long a time period. And yes, that is when stones are more likely to form. So a normal dog should not develop a stone in that case, but a lot of these dogs aren't completely normal. They may have an infection, a low-grade infection. They may have a metabolic disorder. So the more often the dog urinates, the better. So I have people that are like, yep, she only urinates twice a day. She's like a camel. Okay, but that may not be in her best interests. So try to get them to drink more, try to get them to urinate more. And again, drinking fountains can be really great. You can buy some really nice ones that are activated when the dog comes over or that run all the time, and then the water is kept fresh. If you're not using a drinking fountain, the water bowl should be washed with soap and water every single day. I know that sounds like a drag, but it's super important. You can throw it in the dishwasher with your dishes. You can do it by hand, but that daily washing can be really important in removing the biofilm and making the water continually taste better. And if it's fresh and it tastes good, the dog is more likely to drink well. It should be kept filled. It should be available to the dog most of the time, unless you have a reason not to have water in front of the dog all the time. So be sure that you're doing those things. Some dogs love it if you put ice cubes in their water. They float around and the dog can play like little bob for ice cube things. There's a lot of things you can do. I just bought a really cool drinking fountain for my old lady dog because she's elderly now and she has some kidney problems. So I want to make sure that she has access to really tasty water all the time. So it's a rechargeable thing and it just runs. So
Mm.
there's some really nice products on the market that you can use to improve your dog's access to water and the flavor and the interest that the dog has in the water.
Love that.
Doggett simplifies the puppy buying journey by connecting families with the perfect breed and responsible, health-verified breeders. They are the only breeder marketplace that verifies health clearances and responsible breeding practices. Through their personalized puppy matcher tool and matchmaker services, they educate and guide buyers every step of the way, ensuring a seamless process and a perfect match for their lifestyle. From initial breed consultation to introductions with top breeders, Doggett makes responsible puppy ownership easy and stress-free.
Dog breeding is more than a hobby. At its best, it's an all-consuming quest to create something lasting and beautiful in the world. We are super excited to announce that the groundbreaking series Pedigrees to Pups is now streaming live on Doggett. Dr. Marty Greer and I teamed up to offer a complete 360-degree mentoring experience. We're blending advanced reproductive science with that intuitive breeder's eye. You can stream the series today on your Doggett app. If you're unsure, visit puredogtalk.com to get connected. You can answer the call to pursue that one impossible thing. The chance to preserve, protect, and improve something that truly matters. So next up, bladder infection recurring causing the struvite stones. Let's start with that one. And what are we doing other than treating the bladder infection so it doesn't turn into a stone? What else are we doing?
Sure. So some of these dogs that have these problems with bladder infections that are recurrent are females. Most of them are females.
Mm.
And some of them were spayed young. So they'll have a tiny little inverted vulva, and that inverted vulva will collect bacteria in a little fold around the vulva and be more likely to have a bladder problem. Or if she's overweight, she may have kind of a back porch
Mm.
effect. There may be some skin folds that drop over the vulva and again create a bacterial nidus that just sits there. And so some dogs will end up with what's called a vulvoplasty, where the surgery is done to kind of do a lift of that skin. If you don't want to do that, or you can't afford to do it, or it doesn't seem like a good idea because she's 14 and a half, you can keep it shaved, you can keep it clean, you can do baby wipes. I just use aloe baby wipes in that, and then make sure that you get in that little crease all the way around. And you'd be shocked the first time or two you do it, how much debris comes out of there. So keeping up with that, using a probiotic, all those things are really important. Getting some weight off of her if she's overweight, and that's a contributing factor. Those are all things that contribute to bladder infections. And if the dog does show signs of a bladder infection, you should be going into the vet. If she's had a history of bladder infections, this is where that weekly check of the urine pH can be super helpful. You can have your vet order pH paper for you. If they'll do it, great. If they won't, you can get it from the fish store, the pool store. You can buy it online, and you can check the dog's urine pH on a weekly basis. So every Saturday morning you get up and you take your dog out and you put the little pan underneath them. We use an old egg poacher pan, but you can buy kits at Amazon that have a long handle and a little cup on the end. You can just slip it under the dog as she urinates, and then put your dipstick in it to check the pH. And based on if she's had a stone or not, they're going to tell you what the pH target should be. Different stones have different recurrences at certain pHs. So it's important to know if she's had a struvite stone, that's going to be different than a urate, than a cystine, than an oxalate, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. There's all these different kinds of stones, and then there's combinations of those. So you want to know from your veterinarian, what does the urine pH that I want her to have, what does that target look like? And if she's ever had a bladder stone, or he's ever had a bladder stone, and it had to be removed surgically, it's important that that stone is sent into a diagnostic lab. We use the Minnesota University Urolith Center. They do a fantastic job. It takes about 2 or 3 weeks to get the results back, but those pieces of information are absolutely critical in knowing, was it struvite caused by an undertreated or untreated bladder infection? Is it a metabolic stone? Which metabolic stone is it? Is it a combination of those metabolic stones? Because you can have a shell that's one kind, and then a center of the stone that's something else. So you want to have there. It's very complicated. It's not
It's
simple like just
like
a
it's
stone.
not just like bad pee-pee. This is a mess. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Um
So the Minnesota Urolith Center has a website you can get to. You don't have to be a veterinarian. You go in, you find out what kind of stone your dog had, dog or cat. There's a whole dog section, a whole cat section. You just click on that where it says view more. And then you go all the way to the bottom, and you click on that, and it brings up an algorithm of exactly what you should be doing, how you should be doing it, what the treatments are, what the preventions are. So there's great
cool.
information out there. Don't go to Facebook and hang out with the other people that have your dog's kind of bladder
We're
stone.
going to put a
They are
link
not.
on the website. You can go there, click the thing. It'll be great. So
Yeah, it is
so
great.
okay. We're setting aside the untreated, undertreated bladder infection causing struvite stones.
Hmm.
Now we're moving over to the metabolic stones. And so that's telling me there's something in that dog's metabolism that's too high, too low, too something. Let's talk about that.
Sure. And there's so many different kinds that we're not going to delve into each and every one.
Yeah.
But there's all this information out there. So if your dog is diagnosed with a stone, if you can see it on the ultrasound or you see it on the x-ray, and your vet says, well, it looks like it could be a struvite stone. Let's put you on this food for 4 weeks. Let's put you on this antibiotic, and this is the water intake your chart should have and your pH you should have. And in 4 weeks you go back. If it's a struvite stone and you've been compliant, that stone is either smaller or gone, which is like magic. I remember the first meeting I went to that Hales put on when they said we could dissolve bladder stones. And I'm like, it's a rock. What do you mean you can dissolve a rock? You're kidding me. No, actually you can if they're struvite. If it's a combination struvite with something else, or if it's some other kind of stone like an oxalate or a urate, those aren't going to dissolve with appropriate diet and medication. But struvite stones will. And it's really cool. It's really magical when it happens because then you can keep your dog off the surgery table
Mm.
and keep you from having to spend as much money. Now, I personally think bladder surgery is really fun, but most people don't want to pay for me to have a good time while I'm taking stones out of their dog's bladder. So, you want to make
Okay,
sure.
Marty, we have to talk about the fact that your entertainment is a little twisted. I'm just kind of
Well, if I
throwing that
didn't
down.
love doing what I was doing, I wouldn't still be doing it. So
Fair,
let's get real.
fair.
So yeah, and you can see obstructions in dogs, not as often in dogs as cats, and not as often in female dogs as male dogs, but we can see urinary obstructions caused by these stones.
Yeah.
And in fact, about 6 weeks ago, we had a little corgi that came to our practice in Sun Prairie with an obstruction. A female with a urinary obstruction had a bucket full of stones in her bladder. She had, unfortunately, they're like sand through a funnel. They get down in there and they get certain alignment. And then we weren't able to get a catheter in and push them forward. She wasn't able to urinate. We took her to surgery. We had to take the stones out of her bladder so that she could then happily go home healthy because, as in with cats, if they cannot urinate, they will die.
Mm-hmm.
They'll either develop a metabolic condition that changes things so bad that their heart will
Mm-hmm.
slow down and eventually stop, or they will rupture their bladder. So you have to have surgery on these dogs. It has to be done. Females are always easier than males, but even some females can be challenging because it's hard to pass a urinary catheter on a female dog. It's easy on a male dog.
Yeah.
So again, the struvite stones, it's very important that you do monitor these things and that you are on a weekly basis checking pH, feeding the right diet, doing all the right stuff. And some of these dogs will have recurrences if we don't adequately manage them metabolically. So
Okay.
struvite stones are the easiest because they're related to an infection, and infections give us an additional treatment we can have. The other metabolic stones are not as easy because we can't change the dog's metabolic condition or the metabolism that they have to make these certain kinds of stones.
Right. And do we see like large breed, small breed, different types of breeds? Is this like I told you before we started, I had a situation where a pug dog that belonged to a client of mine was being shown by somebody else, and I saw the dog in the pen. I'm like, dude, there's something wrong with this dog. Eventually wound up taking the dog and taking it to the vet, and he
Mhm.
was fully blocked. They were able to finagle it with a catheter, but it was a
Mhm.
mess. And that dog was
Yeah.
very, very sick. Um,
Yes.
so what are we looking at in terms of predisposition, hereditary situations, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So there are definitely some stones like struvites, any breed, but we see them most commonly in corgis and schnauzers.
Mm.
There are other stones that are metabolic. Urates are what Dalmatians are pretty well known for. Cysteine is going to be more bulldogs, the bully breeds. Although we're right now working with a client with a Doberman that has a cysteine stone, and it turns out there's 3 kinds of cysteine, so they're not all the
Not the
same.
Sistine
And
Chapel. Got it.
no, no, starts with a C, Cysteine. So yes, there are different kinds of stones, and those are all really important to know because, for instance, one of the cysteine types of stone, the recommendation is to neuter the male dog. Well, this particular dog is a very important dog, and
Yep.
neutering him would be devastating to the owner and to this dog's
Mhm.
potential career. And until we can prove which kind of cysteine stone he has and see if he is producing puppies with it, they're working on DNA tests for some of these. Some of them we don't have them, some of them we do. Bichons, we know that they're going to have calcium oxalate. There's certain breeds that are predisposed to certain kinds of stones. There's others that are more random. But again, we just don't have DNA tests for a lot of this. And what they are working on is like, what? There's 3 kinds of cysteines? I thought there was one. So, it just makes the more
And
we know,
I
the more
only thought there was
complicated.
one in a chapel in Europe. So what do I know? Uh,
Sorry.
so talk to us about, you're talking about a predisposition, which I think is really interesting. So often when we're talking about health with our dogs, we're not talking about, you know, like a direct line, you are definitely going to get X disease. We're talking about a propensity, right?
Correct.
So,
Right. Just
talk
because
us.
you're a Dalmatian doesn't mean you're going to have a urate stone.
Correct. Correct. But you could have a propensity to have that. Um,
Right.
how are we managing these dogs that we know have a propensity, right? Are we feeding them a certain food? Are we going with a low protein diet? Are we like what are we doing here?
Yeah, and it depends on the stone. So, without knowing which kind of stone it is, yes, there are different levels of protein, there are different pH levels, there are different amounts of minerals in the diet, neuter or not neuter,
Mm,
all those different things. So, this is where it really comes down to we're not going to talk about every single nuance of every single stone, but rather to say if your dog has had stones and they can retrieve them with a catheter or retrieve them surgically, you need to have them sent into the diagnostic lab and have them assessed because super important that we know which one it is and that we're treating correctly
okay.
to keep you from having those recurrences. And some of them, even though we do all the right things, we put them on potassium citrate, we put them on the right diet, we do all the stuff. Some of these dogs are just going to be back to having a stone in 18 to 24 months. And so you just have to realize that your insurance, if it's pre-existing, isn't going to cover it
Mm,
because it's pre-existing. So you just have to kind of plan. That's the way it's going to have to be.
mm. Interesting. Even wow. Okay. So that's kind of crappy.
Well, it is. But I mean, it happens in people too. It's like gallbladder stones. It's like certain things there's only so much you can do to prevent them.
Okay. All right. So treatment then is what?
Antibiotics, if it's a struvite, no antibiotics routinely if it's not a struvite, and the appropriate diet and the appropriate pH management for the urine
For
are
that.
basically the things that you can
Okay.
do, and making sure the dog gets plenty to drink and urinates as frequently as you can let them out. So this is where if you work all day, you may have to have a dog sitter that comes in. This is where
Dog
you may
door.
set up doggy door. You may set up some area that we have Brilliant Pad that has the ability to let dogs go potty on them. So there's a lot of different things. The other thing that I found when I was reading and I was unaware of, and I told you that this is relatively
Uh-oh.
new.
I have to tell you, guys, honestly, I honestly did not think there was anything Marty didn't know. So this kind of blew up my mind again.
So as I was reading about this stuff, there is actually a mycoplasma infection that we can see causing bladder infections in dogs. It is very rare, and it's really hard to diagnose because a regular culture that your vet would send in won't pick up mycoplasma.
Right.
Now, mycoplasma's had a dirty name in the world of breeders for a long time.
Hmm.
It's a not a bacteria, it's not a virus. It's too small to be a bacteria and too big to be a virus, and it's somewhere in between. But we know that they exist, and they're not unusual in the respiratory tract, so eyes and nose, and it's not unusual in the urinary or urogenital tract in dogs, but it can be found in normal dogs and it can be found in dogs with fertility issues. It can be in normal dogs or it can be dogs with bladder infections. So it does require a special culture to find the mycoplasma because it won't grow on the regular culture media. It's a fastidious bacteria that's hard to culture. But if you have had a dog with these recurrent infections, they can see something going on. Sometimes it's combined with other bacteria, sometimes it stands alone. But if you've had a dog with recurrent problems and you're just beating your head against the wall and it's not solving your problem, you may ask your vet to do this special culture for mycoplasma.
Hmm.
It's really rare. It's somewhere under 4% of the dogs that have bladder infections, but it's still interesting to know that we may have something that hasn't been diagnosed.
Well, and I have at least heard the term mycoplasma
Oh,
in breeding dogs,
yeah.
so where people are saying, well, he's sterile because of a mycoplasma infection. And you're
Yeah.
saying, no, that's not real.
Not necessarily. We don't really know the significance of it. You can find it in normal reproductive tracts of
Right.
males and females. You can find it in infertile or sterile reproductive tracts of males and females. So the question is, what is it? What is the significance if you
Hmm.
culture it? What is the significance of finding it? And the answer is we may not know. It may or may not be linked to this infertility or this bladder infection, but it's at least worth taking a look at and
Another thing, right?
treating. Right, and treatment is either doxycycline or enrofloxacin like Baytril. But again, that doesn't mean every dog that has a bladder infection should be slammed on
Right.
to doxycycline or
Ba-
Baytril. It doesn't mean every dog with a fertility issue should be put on those things.
Right.
But because so when we culture a urinary tract in a dog or a genital tract in a dog, the only thing we know that isn't supposed to be there is brucellosis. Every other bacteria, every other organism, every other thing that we can find may be present in a normal dog or may be present in an affected dog. So this is where medicine becomes a little bit blurry. It's not black and white. It's not easy.
Interesting. Nuance. Who knew that nuance was actually a thing, Marty?
Yes, it
Sorry,
is not as easy as it
sarcasm.
sounds.
Just a little sarcasm for a
It's
Sunday.
not just your dog has a bacterial infection and boom, here's the simple answer.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Nuance is a thing, y'all. Just throwing that out into the ether. Okay. Well, there you go. Bladders. 101 for on the canine side, y'all. Lots of stuff and some sort of frustrating stuff, I think, but at least
But stuff.
And better to know than not know.
Right. So use the resources that we're providing you
Yep.
and work closely with your veterinarian. Follow their instructions because they're not just trying to gouge you. They are really, really trying to keep your dog off of their surgery table because they may not be as excited about bladder surgery as I am.
Not everybody's a surgery freak. I don't know how to tell you this, Marty.
I'm sorry.
I know too many good surgeons to think you're alone, but I'm saying not everybody is. All right. Well, that's what we got for you guys today. Stay tuned. Next week we'll have something new and different and exciting. If you have a question or an idea, just drop us an email. All right. Have a great day, Marty.
Bye.
Hey, friends. Did you know that the Marty and Laura Show website has a special page just for young animal lovers? Whether your child is meeting their first pet or already dreaming of becoming a veterinarian, Kids Corner is a place to explore animals through creativity, curiosity, and age-appropriate learning. Designed for young animal lovers and their families, these resources encourage empathy, responsibility, and a lifelong love of pets. Start off with a free coloring page. That's right. A new coloring page is available regularly. Download one free and check back often for new designs. And if you love that free page, take your coloring adventure further with the 10-page Color Me Pets coloring pack for just $5. Each page is filled with adorable, breed-specific dogs and fun educational prompts that spark creativity and curiosity. This pack is perfect for kids who want to explore, who want to color, and who want to discover more about pets. It encourages careful observation, fine motor skills, and an appreciation for animals, all while providing hours of fun. Plus, it's an easy, printable download, perfect for rainy days, long car rides, or creative play at home. Artwork by award-winning artist Sandy Mesmer, the Color Me Canine collection brings even more adorable pets and fun designs. Explore full coloring books available online through Sandy's shop link on our page. Visit martyandlaurashow.com/kids-corner to learn more. Thank you for joining us on the Marty and Laura Show. We're excited to bring you these unique, fun, fact-based conversations about pet health. We hope you'll join us on social. Stop by the website to sign up for an extra tip of the week for your pet. While you're at it, do us a favor, please, and leave a review wherever you find your podcasts. The Marty and Laura Show is produced by Pure Dog Talk, Inc. Sound design and editing by Premium Audio Services.